Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. I want to begin today by inviting you to breathe for a moment. Take a breathy because this is going to be tender, intimate terrain. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat alone in your home, scrolling mindlessly through your phone, when suddenly you see it? A picture, a post, or a rumor that she is seeing someone new. Your stomach tightens, your mind races. You feel the air thicken, and that familiar ache settles into your chest, the ache of rejection, abandonment, perhaps even betrayal. And yet I want you to know this: what you feel in that moment is not unusual, nor is it wrong. But here's the real question I want us to sit with today. Does her moving on really mean you're losing something precious, or is it awakening something inside you that was asleep for far too long? You see, so often when we discover that someone we once loved is giving their affection to another, we panic. We spiral, we construct stories about what this means for our worth, for our future, for our very identity as a man. But what if, just what if, this moment wasn't a signal that you've lost, but rather an invitation to meet yourself again, to understand your attachments, your longings, your wounds, and perhaps even your freedom? Today, that's where we begin. So as you sit here with me, still carrying that weight in your chest, let's gently slow the conversation down. Because that panic, that sudden tightening in your body when you hear that she's seeing someone new, it's not only about her. In fact, if we're honest, it's rarely about her at all. It's about what she represented to you. And right now, your mind is running ahead, imagining their dinners, their late night talks, their shared laughter, while you sit here thinking that you have somehow been replaced. But here's what I want you to hear, truly hear, as if I am sitting right beside you. You have not been replaced. You have been redirected, and the reason this moment feels so overwhelming is because you had tethered part of your identity to her acceptance, to her affection, to her gaze. Her gaze told you who you were: a lover, a man worth desiring, a man who mattered. And now, with her gaze directed elsewhere, you feel that your worth has been withdrawn. That's where the panic comes from. It's not only about losing love. It's about losing the mirror that reflected your desirability back to you. And in this moment, you may be tempted to reach out to her, to text, to call, to plead for some explanation that will soothe this ache inside you. But I'm here to tell you, don't, not because reaching out is weak or wrong, but because what you're seeking right now is not her. You are seeking yourself, and you won't find yourself in her response. Instead, let's sit in this discomfort together for a moment longer and really look at what it's telling you. The panic is saying, am I lovable? Do I matter? Will I be okay without her? And those are profoundly human questions. They come from the parts of you that crave connection, that fear abandonment, that ache for certainty. These questions don't mean you're broken. They mean you're alive. But here's where we start to untangle this. You can be alive without panic. You can be deeply feeling, deeply connected, deeply desirous without spiraling into desperation. The key lies in understanding that her choice to love someone new is not a referendum on your worth. It's a reflection of where she is, what she needs, what she is seeking at this moment in her life. And that, my friend, is one of the first truths I want to offer you. Her new relationship isn't about you. It's about her. Let me share a small story to illustrate this, because sometimes hearing about another's experience helps us recognize ourselves. A man I worked with recently, let's call him David, was devastated when he found out his ex-partner was dating again. He told me, Esther, it feels like she's erasing me, like I didn't matter at all. But as we sat with his feelings, something interesting emerged. He realized that throughout their relationship he had been so consumed with keeping her happy that he had never really tended to his own desires, his own growth. He had defined his entire sense of self around being her partner, so when she left and fell in love again, It felt as if his entire identity collapsed. But slowly, gently, he began to see that she hadn't erased him. She had simply stepped into a new chapter of her life. And this painful rupture was actually revealing that he had some rebuilding to do within himself. This is what I want you to recognize too. The panic you feel is really the loss of that mirror you used to see yourself. So what if we didn't rush to fix that feeling? What if we allowed it to show you the parts of yourself you've neglected? I want you to pause right now and ask yourself not why did she leave, not why does she love someone new, but rather, where have I lost myself? Where did I become so dependent on her attention that her absence feels like a collapse? You see, it's tempting to think that if you could just get her back, the panic would go away. But in truth, the panic isn't healed by her return. It is healed by your return to yourself. This brings us to the second truth I want to offer you tonight. You must differentiate between rejection and redirection. Most of us hear that she's with someone new and we collapse into the feeling of rejection. I wasn't enough. He must be better than me. I failed. But let me gently suggest another perspective. What if this is not rejection but a redirection, a chance to finally turn your gaze inward? To ask, what do I want to build next? What kind of man do I want to be now? That's what David eventually discovered. As his grief softened, he realized that he had abandoned himself long before she had. He hadn't pursued his creative passions. He hadn't cultivated his friendships. He had let his sense of worth rise and fall entirely on her moods and opinions. This moment you are in, the moment where it feels like you are falling apart, is actually the moment where you can rebuild with intention, where you can let go of needing to define yourself by being chosen, and instead define yourself by being whole. So let's take another breath together. Yes, she is with someone new, and yes, that hurts. There's no need to minimize it or rush past it. But no, it does not define your worth. It does not define your future. It simply invites you to reconnect with the parts of you that may have grown quiet in the shadow of that relationship. It invites you to remember that your wholeness was never hers to give or take away. And as we continue, I want us to lean into this idea, not with bitterness or bravado, but with curiosity and courage. Because this pain, uncomfortable as it is, might just be the portal to the next chapter of your life. You're still with me, and that's important because it means that even amidst your grief, even amidst that gnawing curiosity about who he is and what she feels for him, you're willing to stay present to yourself. That in itself is a powerful sign of emotional maturity. I know there's a part of you that keeps circling back to one burning question. Does this mean she never loved me? It's such a deeply human question, isn't it? When we discover that someone we cared for has moved on quickly or seems radiant in a new relationship, we tend to retroactively question everything that came before. Was it all fake? Did I imagine it? Was she already pulling away long before I noticed? And here's the gentle truth I want to offer you. Love can be real and still incomplete. Love can be sincere and yet insufficient for longevity. She may very well have loved you with all she had to give at the time, and still have outgrown the space you created together. This doesn't mean you were foolish to trust her or foolish to invest your heart. It means that relationships, like people, evolve, and sometimes they don't evolve together. But when you panic, you reduce all this nuance into a single sentence. If she loves someone new, she must not have loved me enough. That reduction is what we're resisting today. Instead of collapsing into that story, I invite you to widen your lens. She might love someone new, and you might still have been deeply important to her. Those two things can coexist. This is where we start reclaiming your dignity, not through denial, not by vilifying her or belittling her choices, but by allowing complexity to exist. The panic comes from oversimplifying. If she's happy now, I must have made her unhappy before. If she's in love now, I must have been a poor lover then. No, no. Life rarely follows such simple arithmetic. Sometimes the person we love doesn't stay, not because we weren't enough, but because they needed a new context for their own growth. She may have been searching for a different reflection of herself, one she felt unable to access within the dynamic you shared. This is not about your inadequacy, it's about her journey. Now you might say, but Esther, I'm not angry, I'm just haunted. I can't stop imagining them together. I can't stop picturing their intimacy, their laughter, their connection. Yes, that mental haunting is very real. It's almost as if your mind becomes obsessed with creating a vivid movie of what you imagine is happening between them. Scene by scene, detail by detail, even though none of this actually serves your healing, and this mental cinema amplifies your suffering because it focuses all your attention outward on them rather than inward, where your actual power lies. So here's what I encourage you to practice. Whenever you notice that you are spinning in that movie, gently pull yourself back to this moment. Look around, feel the chair you're sitting in, place a hand on your chest, ask yourself, what do I need right now, not in the fantasy of their life together, but right here in this present breath. This small practice of returning to yourself, of recognizing when your mind has left you behind and bringing it gently back, will be one of your greatest tools for dissolving panic. Because you see, panic thrives on imagination. It thrives on the stories we spin about what might be happening out there. And calm arises when we anchor ourselves in what is happening right here, right now. You may notice that you're tempted to compare yourself to this new person in her life. You might be asking yourself, is he taller, more successful, funnier, more attentive? And I understand this temptation intimately. When someone we loved is now loving another, we instinctively measure ourselves against them, as if love were a contest we have lost. But here's another truth that may feel difficult at first, but ultimately liberating. No two relationships are identical, even when they involve the same person. The way she loves him will not be the way she loved you, because she is not the same woman now that she was with you. The relationship she creates with him will be shaped by who she is today, just as your relationship was shaped by who you both were then. So the comparisons are futile. They reduce complex human dynamics to surface-level attributes. Instead of asking, is he better? Ask yourself, how can I be more present to my own life now that this chapter is closing? You cannot control who she chooses to love next, but you can control how you show up for yourself, how you care for your own mind, your own body, your own heart. And here's another thing, sometimes when a woman moves on quickly, it can feel like your entire shared history is being discarded. But love doesn't work like that. What you shared remains real. What you built together existed. The memories, the intimacy, the growth, they all shaped you both, and they will continue to echo through the rest of your lives, whether you are together or not. This is why I say don't panic. Panic is a rush to judgment, a rush to closure, a rush to soothe your pain by clinging to explanations or comparisons. But what I am inviting you into is a different process entirely, a slower, more dignified process of mourning, of understanding, of curiosity. So yes, she's loving someone new, and yes, that may sting, but no, you are not erased, no, you are not worthless. No, this is not the end of your ability to feel love, to receive love, to offer love. Right now, your task is to hold yourself with tenderness as you feel this pain, without letting the pain define your worth or dictate your story. You can let this moment shape you into a more present, more grounded, more self-aware man, not because you are broken and need fixing, but because you are human and this is the work of living. Take another breath with me, feel the ground beneath you, feel the truth of this moment. You are here. You are alive, you are capable of love even as you grieve, and that, my friend, is where we continue. And so, here we are together, sitting in this quiet space of reflection, not rushing, not reaching for easy answers. If you are still with me, it means you are beginning to understand that your worth is not dictated by her new relationship, and that there is dignity in allowing yourself to feel this grief without Panic without shame, but I know what your heart may still be whispering. What about closure? What about the questions that were never answered? This desire for closure can feel so urgent, so all-consuming. You may believe that if you could just have one more conversation, one more chance to understand why she moved on, then the ache inside you would dissolve. But here's the paradox of closure. It is rarely something we receive from another. It is something we create within ourselves. You see, we often mistake answers for healing. We think that if she would sit us down and explain exactly why she left, exactly why this new man now holds her attention, then we could finally put the story to rest. But in truth, even if she gave you every detail, every explanation, the ache would still linger, because the ache is not about her reasons, it is about your longing. Longing is a very particular kind of pain. It is the space between what was and what might have been. It lives in that liminal zone where imagination fills in the blanks, where we romanticize the relationship we lost, and where we project perfection onto the new one she's building with someone else. And yet, longing is also a deeply creative space. It is where new meaning can emerge, if we are willing to listen. So rather than chasing closure from her, I want you to begin practicing closure with yourself, and this is not a single event, it is a process. It begins by acknowledging that you may never get all the answers you want, and recognizing that you can still heal without them. Closure is not about tying everything into a neat narrative. It is about reaching a point where you can say, "This story shaped me, but it no longer defines me." This leads us into another difficult truth you must hold if you wish to move forward without panic. There is no clean ending to a love that once mattered. Even as she loves someone new, she may think of you from time to time. Even as you try to move on, memories will surface. Songs, places, scents, all will remind you of what was shared, and that's okay. The goal is not to erase those memories, but to integrate them. To allow them to take their place in the library of your life, rather than leaving them scattered on the floor around you. I often say that grief is the price we pay for attachment. When you loved deeply, you invested not just in her, but in a shared future, in routines, in habits of thought and feeling. The loss of that partnership is not just the loss of a person, it is the loss of all the small rituals and rhythms you built together. And that loss deserves to be honored, not panicked over. So here's something I want you to consider today. Instead of seeing her new love as a rejection, can you see it as an invitation to reclaim your own life? Her story is now diverging from yours. That is a fact, but your story is still unfolding. And this chapter of grief, reflection, and self-reclamation can be one of the richest chapters of all if you approach it with curiosity rather than fear. You may notice that as time goes on, some people around you will rush you to move on. They may offer you advice meant to comfort, but that feels hollow. She wasn't right for you anyway. You'll find someone better. Just get back out there. But I'm not here to rush you. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to move slowly through this landscape of grief and growth. And at the same time, I want to gently remind you that moving on doesn't mean forgetting her or forgetting what you shared. It means choosing to inhabit your own life more fully again. It means turning your gaze inward and outward toward the world around you, rather than backward. And yes, you will still think of her sometimes. You will still wonder what might have been. But those thoughts can become quieter companions rather than loud intruders, if you allow them to take their rightful place, as part of your history, not your present. So what does it look like to start reclaiming your life? It looks like reconnecting with parts of yourself that you may have neglected. It looks like nurturing friendships that may have gone quiet while you were so focused on your relationship. It looks like picking up passions and projects that once brought you joy, not as distractions, but as acts of self-care and self-expression. One of the most liberating moments in this process is when you realize that you don't need her new relationship to fail in order for you to heal. That's where many people get stuck. They wait and hope that the relationship will collapse so that they can feel vindicated, validated, restored. But your restoration doesn't depend on what happens between her and this new person. Your restoration depends on your willingness to meet yourself where you are now with compassion, with honesty, and with a commitment to living fully even as you grieve. You may even reach a point where you can sincerely wish her well, not because you don't care anymore, but because you care for yourself enough to release resentment. Wishing her well is not capitulation, it is not defeat, it is an act of profound self-respect. It says, I honor what we had. I honor my grief, and I honor my right to move forward in peace. As we sit here together, I hope you can feel this truth settling into your bones. You do not need to panic. You can allow the grief to move through you without rushing to fix it, or numb it, or explain it away. You can let her go and still hold on to your dignity, your integrity, and your capacity to love. Take another breath. Place your hand on your heart again if that feels comforting, and know that this journey you are on is not linear. Some days will feel easy, others will feel unbearably heavy, but through it all you are learning to return to yourself. That is the work, that is the path, and it's a path worth walking slowly, gently, intentionally. And as you sit with me now, still breathing, still present, I want to invite you to notice something subtle but transformative. Even though you may feel wounded, you are already demonstrating a profound strength simply by staying in this conversation, by not rushing to escape discomfort, by choosing reflection over reaction. There is power in this pause. The panic we spoke of earlier thrives in urgency. It wants you to act quickly, impulsively, to soothe the ache. But what you are doing right now, by listening, by reflecting, is an act of self-possession. You are reclaiming your time, your thoughts, your dignity. This brings me to another layer of what we must examine together. You see, when a woman moves on and loves someone new, part of your pain may not just be about her. It may also be about the version of yourself you imagined becoming with her. You had visions, didn't you? Dreams you shared together, holidays, dinners, perhaps a home, a family, a future sketched out in quiet moments when you believed this was your person. And now that future seems to belong to another man, and so part of what hurts is not just that she's loving someone new, but that the future you imagined for yourself is dissolving. That future was a comfort, a container for your hopes. It gave shape to your days, and when that vision slips away, it can leave you feeling untethered, adrift. But what I want you to realize is this: the future you imagined may not have been your future to begin with. It was a shared dream, and like all shared dreams, it was subject to change. Now the task before you is not to salvage that old dream, but to rediscover your own, to ask yourself, gently but honestly, without her, who do I want to become? What kind of man am I now, at this intersection of grief and possibility? It's tempting to think that the answer lies in immediate distraction. Some might tell you, go out, meet someone new, move on. And yes, in time, that may happen organically. But I am not urging you to rush toward another woman to fill this space. I am inviting you to inhabit this space yourself. In the absence of her, what music stirs you? What places call to you? What work, what passions, what friendships await your return? This is a sacred moment. A moment when you can choose to rebuild your sense of self, not in opposition to her, not as revenge or rebound, but as an authentic expression of who you are becoming. You see, when we anchor our healing to someone else's downfall or return, we stay trapped in a cycle of dependency. True healing begins when you allow your heart to break open, not closed. It begins when you say, yes, this hurts, but I will not let this hurt make me smaller. Sometimes, when I sit with men who are going through this very moment, men like you, they admit that they feel ashamed for still loving her. They want to purge that love quickly, surgically, as if to love her now is a weakness. But let me tell you this, love is not something you can simply turn off. And there is no shame in the fact that you still care, that you still feel. In fact, that tenderness is what keeps you human, what keeps you connected to your own capacity for intimacy and depth. The goal is not to stop loving her. It is to stop needing her love in return to feel whole. And you may notice that as you let yourself feel this grief fully, without panic, without rushing, without shame, something remarkable happens. The love you felt for her begins to transmute into a different kind of love, a love for yourself, a love for your life, a love for the possibility that even though this chapter is ending, another chapter is waiting to be written. And in that chapter, you will no longer define yourself as the man she left, or the man who lost her. You will define yourself as a man who survived heartbreak and chose to grow from it. A man who discovered that his capacity for love was not depleted by loss, but deepened by it. So, my dear friend, as we sit here together, I want you to remember, you are not in competition with the man she loves now. You are not racing against time to find a replacement. You are not broken or discarded or worthless. You are simply at a threshold, a tender, vulnerable, courageous threshold between what was and what will be. And at this threshold you can choose. You can choose panic or you can choose presence. You can choose obsession or you can choose self-discovery. You can choose to measure your worth by her new relationship, or you can choose to measure your worth by how fully you meet yourself right now. This is your invitation to meet yourself again, not as the man who was her partner, not as the man who lost, but as the man who is alive, awake, and worthy. Take another breath. You are doing well. You are already practicing a new way of being, one that honors your grief without letting it consume you, one that welcomes your emotions without letting them define you. You have survived heartbreak before. You will survive this too, and in the process you may discover that you are not only surviving, you are growing. You're still here with me, and that means you are ready to sit with something that many people avoid. The truth that grief and growth are not opposites, they are companions. This moment in your life, though filled with discomfort, is not just about loss. It is about rediscovering who you are when no one else is defining you, shaping you, or reflecting you back to yourself. You see, we often assume that relationships provide us with love, but what they also provide, and what we become so attached to, is context. Context for our days, our decisions, our desires. She provided a context for you, the shared plans, the routines, the feeling that your life made sense when it was aligned with hers. And now that context is dissolving. But dissolving doesn't mean disappearing, it means returning to fluidity, to possibility, to a space where you get to shape your life again on your terms. There's a part of you that may still resist this truth. It whispers, but it was easier when she was here. Easier to feel love, to feel purpose, to feel seen. That's natural. You're human. We all long to feel deeply connected, and it can feel frightening to face yourself without that context, without that mirror. But what if this is precisely the moment when you become more whole than ever, not by rejecting love or closing your heart, but by opening it first and foremost to yourself? Because here's something most people overlook. Your capacity to love another is directly linked to your capacity to love yourself in your aloneness. Not in isolation or loneliness, but in solitude, in the quiet space where you can hear your own thoughts and longings without distortion. You may be surprised at what arises in this space. You may discover passions that had been set aside while you tended to the relationship. You may rediscover friendships that had gone quiet while you prioritized coupledom. You may notice longings within yourself that are not about her at all, but about your own unlived life. And that is where healing deepens, not when you erase memories, not when you pretend you're unaffected, but when you say, even as I miss her, I am turning toward myself now. Some of you listening might still be wondering, but can't I still hold on to hope? What if she comes back? What if this new relationship doesn't last? I understand that hope, truly I do. Hope is a powerful thing. But hope can also be a trap if it keeps you from living in the present. What I am inviting you to do is to distinguish between hope for her return and hope for your own future. The first is tethered to circumstances you can't control. The second is rooted in your own agency, your own ability to heal and thrive no matter what she chooses. So, instead of sitting in a waiting room of your life, hoping she will return, I want you to step into the fullness of your life now, whether or not she ever looks back. And perhaps in doing so, you will come to realize that this isn't about winning her back or proving your worth. It's about remembering that your worth was never dependent on her choice in the first place. I know that sounds simple, and yet living it is not easy. Because so many of us grew up believing that love from another person is the ultimate proof of our value. But it isn't. Love from another is beautiful, nourishing, exquisite, but it is not proof that you matter. You matter because you are here. You matter because you breathe. You matter because your heart is capable of feeling so deeply, even when it hurts. And your capacity for love doesn't end with this relationship. In fact, this heartbreak may expand your heart if you let it. It may allow you to love with greater depth, greater tenderness, greater presence the next time, precisely because you have learned what it means to lose and survive. You may come to see that love is not about possession or permanence. It is about presence, about mutual choice, about freedom. And freedom is what I want you to claim now, not freedom as a rejection of her, but freedom as a returning to yourself. Freedom to feel everything you're feeling without judgment, freedom to grieve at your own pace, freedom to build a life that is yours, fully yours, not waiting for her attention or anyone else's approval. You can begin right now by simply sitting quietly and noticing the tenderness that still lives inside you, not as weakness, but as proof that you are still capable of loving and being loved. Take another breath. This is your moment, not because she is with someone new, but because you are choosing to come home to yourself. And that, my friend, is where peace begins, not in controlling what she does, not in comparing yourself to the man she's with, not in wishing things were different, but in saying, even as I feel this pain, I am alive. Even as I long for what we had, I am here. Even as I wonder what could have been, I am open to what will be. This is not the end of your story. It is simply a transition. A delicate, beautiful, challenging, and worthy transition from needing her gaze to meet your worth to discovering that your worth has always been yours to claim. So here we are, together at this threshold where reflection meets decision. You have walked through the depths with me, holding your pain gently, examining your stories, pausing your panic. And now I want to speak to something that often lingers quietly beneath even the grief, fear, because when she loves someone new, it's not only grief that rises, it's also fear of what comes next. Fear that you will remain alone, fear that you'll never be desired again, fear that this ache will become permanent. And I want you to know that this fear is normal, human, tender, but not prophetic. The presence of fear does not predict your future. It only signals that you are stepping into an unknown space, a space that was once filled with certainty because she was beside you, and now feels wide and undefined. But if you can soften toward this fear rather than resist it, you will discover something beautiful. Freedom always feels a little like fear at first. Freedom is not the absence of feeling. It's the courage to feel all of it without running, without clinging, without demanding answers that may never come. In this freedom, there is a profound truth waiting for you. You are not just a man she once loved. You are a man who is capable of loving life itself, of loving yourself, of loving again, not as a way to prove your worth, but as a way to live fully. This is why you must resist the temptation to define your healing by the story of her new relationship. What she is building with someone else belongs to her path now, and your path, your beautiful, unique, and unfolding path, deserves your attention. And I want you to imagine, even if just for a moment, what your life could look like if you gave yourself that attention. If you chose to pour all that longing, all that tenderness, all that desire to feel alive, not into winning her affection, but into discovering what makes you come alive. Imagine that you wake up tomorrow, and instead of checking to see if she has posted a new picture, you check in with yourself. What do I want to feel today? What experience will nourish me? What relationship, perhaps a friendship, a connection to family, a connection to nature or creativity, can I nurture today? That is where dignity lies, not in how quickly you can move on, not in who loves you next, but in how fully you inhabit your own life now. And here's something else I want you to know. Even if your heart still loves her, and maybe it will for a long time, that does not mean you are stuck. Loving someone who has moved on does not mean you can't live richly. Love doesn't need to be rushed into exile just because circumstances have changed. You can let that love soften into gratitude, gratitude for what you learned together, gratitude for the growth you experienced, gratitude even for the pain, because the pain is reminding you that you can still feel deeply, that you have not gone numb, that you are still alive. And being alive is the greatest gift. This aliveness is what I want you to reclaim, not despite your heartbreak, but through it. Because this heartbreak, uncomfortable and unwelcome as it may be, is a portal to knowing yourself more intimately than ever before. You are learning what it means to grieve with grace. You are learning what it means to hold space for your sadness without letting it harden into bitterness. You are learning what it means to witness yourself tenderly when no one else is watching, and one day, maybe sooner than you expect, you will notice that something inside you has shifted. You will wake up and realize that her name is not the first thought that enters your mind. You will walk past a place where you once shared memories and feel a quiet smile instead of a sharp ache. You will meet someone new, not as a way to replace her, but as a man who is whole and ready. And when that day comes, you will not look back with regret, but with respect for yourself, for your journey, for your willingness to stay present to this process, even when it was hard, even when you felt lost. So take another breath with me now. You are doing something extraordinary simply by allowing yourself to feel, to reflect, to listen. You are honoring your humanity, your vulnerability, your longing, and that is not weakness, that is strength. You don't need to panic. You don't need to collapse into stories of rejection or failure. You don't need to compare yourself to him or define your future by her choices. Instead, you can choose presence, you can choose self-compassion, you can choose curiosity about what comes next, not from a place of desperation, but from a place of dignity. Your worth was never hers to give, and it isn't his to replace. Your worth is yours, it always has been. So as we come to a close today, I want to thank you for showing up, for staying, for listening not just to me, but to yourself. I hope you will carry this conversation with you as a reminder that you can meet this moment of heartbreak with courage, with tenderness, and with a profound sense of self-respect. And as you continue on this journey, remember, you are not defined by who left. You are defined by how you live, by how you love, by how you return to yourself again and again. Thank you for being here with me in the Intimacy Lab. If this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to share your thoughts, your feelings, your stories in the comments below. I read them and I care about this space we create together. And if you found comfort here, I hope you'll like this video, subscribe to the channel, and come back for more honest, tender conversations about love, loss, intimacy, and what it means to live fully even after heartbreak. Here's to your next chapter. May it be rich, real, and deeply your own.